if you take a look at since the United States has cut back our carbohydrate intake, and we've cut it back significantly since about 1999, 1998. Since that time, obesity has skyrocketed. We're eating less carbs than ever, and we're more obese than we ever have been, and more unhealthy than we've ever been. So, going low carb has not helped us. I think going low carb is not great from a gut health perspective. The quality of calories that you consume on a low carbohydrate diet tend to be a little bit worse, depending on who you listen to. Cutting out carbs also means cutting out carrots and tomatoes and a lot of fruits, whole grains, all of these things that have a plethora of research showing the health benefits of them. So going low carb has not worked for us, is not working for us.
This week, I interviewed Harley Pasternak. Harley is a Canadian personal trainer, professor, and author known for his work with celebrities and his evidence-based approach to fitness and nutrition. He's authored several best-selling books, including The 5-Factor Diet, The Body Reset Diet, and has designed fitness facilities for Four Seasons hotels and resorts. We discussed his new book, The Carb Reset, and how we shouldn't be afraid of carbohydrates, along with why fats could be causing your weight gain, why preparation of greens makes all the difference, the importance of a balanced diet, and his one tip to get your body back to what it once was. Really enjoyed my interview with Harley. I know you will too. Thanks so much for listening and enjoy the show. All right, welcome to the Get Lean, Eat Clean podcast. My name is Brian Gryn, and I have Harley Pasternak on. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming on. Best-selling author, also worked with a bunch of celebs through the years, gym designer as well, and you're out of California, correct?
Based out of Los Angeles, exactly.
And have you always been out of LA or been moved around?
No, I'm actually born and raised in Canada, and spent most of my life there, and moved about 22, 23 years ago to the United States, and I've been here since.
Awesome. Yeah. And what made you get into like health and wellness? Like who influenced you to get to sort of go down this route?
My mom took me to the YMCA when I was really young, and saw me kind of looking like I was going to hurt myself in the gym, and got me. Back then, they didn't have personal trainers, but she hired the local high school phys ed coach to spend 3 sessions with me and teach me how to bench press and squat. And I was a hockey player in Canada. Got into strength training to be better at hockey. Went to university. Spent almost 10 years in university doing degrees in exercise science, nutritional science. Was working towards a P.A.T.H, and got recruited by the military as an exercise and nutrition scientist. And I concurrently started a training business in Toronto that took care of all the Hollywood actors that came there to shoot films. So, Spider-Man, Superman, Catwoman, Green Hornet, X-Men. Built a mobile gym, largest mobile gym in the world, that would travel to film sets for Halle Berry and Will Smith and Tobey Maguire, and started writing books about fitness and nutrition. The books did well around the world in, I think, 14 languages. The books became brands, became TV shows and kitchen appliances and video games and gyms. And here we are today, 34 years after I started.
Wow, it's amazing. Who's your favorite celeb to work with, that you worked with?
To work with?
Yeah.
There's so many. I'm very, very lucky in that the clients that I have don't have to come to me. They choose to be with me, in so much as it's not like someone's sending them to me against their will. And the better they do with me, the better they look, the better they feel, the better their film is, or TV show, or runway. And so they're all very motivated. And so they're for the most part, they tend to be very nice. Ariana Grande is wonderful. Gosh, I'm so lucky. I have so many.
Tough to pick favorites, right?
I have a lot like funny people. I've worked. My favorite are the comedians over the years. So whether it be Jason Segel and Paul Rudd and Seth Rogen and Sarah Silverman and Amy Schumer, the list goes on. Funny people tend to be really great to work with.
Yeah, I've seen Amy Schumer live. She was good. She was
very
good.
funny.
Yeah. And the books, and I know you have one coming up. It's not out yet. Is that correct? The Carb Reset?
Comes out, I think, August 19th. But pre-sales are right now, so people can log on and pre-order them now, so you can get one of the first ones.
And what influenced you to write this book and just talk about, I mean, obviously I'm sure there's a lot in there regarding, I'm guessing regarding how carbs are can be healthy for you. And I think there's sort of a misnomer around that. And I've talked about that before on my podcast, but what influenced you to write this book?
So I'm actually an adjunct professor at University of Toronto. I teach nutrition. I come from a very evidence-based background, and this will be my eighth nutrition book. My message has never changed, and as diet trends come and go, high carb, low carb, gluten, eat like a caveman, eat like a religious figure. I'm still standing with the same message. And from a scientific perspective, that message has always been heavily supported by the benefits of having carbohydrates as at least half your calories, if not more than half your calories. Um, I travel a lot for work, and I remember the first time I went to Japan, what was glaringly obvious to me, I think at the time, Japan had a 2% obesity rate,
Hmm.
literally 2%. Today, we have a 44% obesity rate in the US. And so that was culturally shocking for me. So I really wanted to understand these people live longer than anyone else in the world. They have amongst the lowest obesity and diabetes rates and heart disease rates. And what are they doing? And so let's take a look at their diet. Let's start with there. And they have amongst the highest carbohydrate diets in the world.
Right.
They eat a lot of rice, which goes in the face of everything that we get bombarded with in North America about, rice is bad, carbs are bad, starch is bad. And we can get into that in a minute. And I started to look a little closer as, okay, what other countries eat like this and are successful doing it? And the truth is, if you look at the 10 healthiest countries in the world with the lowest obesity, heart disease, cancers, for the most part, these are high carbohydrate diets. These are countries that consume almost 60% of their calories from carbohydrates, where in the United States, we're just about 40%. So they're consuming, 40, 50% more carbohydrates than we do in the United States as a percentage of their calories. And they're healthier, longer living, leaner. So that sort of started the thought process for me is, why are we cutting carbs again? I know it's not fun to do. I know that the basic logic in me, when I see someone go to In-N-Out Burger and order a bacon double cheeseburger with no bun, that doesn't seem healthy. So why do the people think it's healthy? And so I really spent time doing a lot of searches on PubMed and taking deep dives into the health benefits of making carbohydrates a higher part of your diet and the detriments of living a low carb lifestyle.
Yeah, I think it's great that you're sort of sending this message out because, like, even myself, there's, for a while I was fairly low carb and doing a lot of fasting, and I've had the podcast for 5, 6 years now, and I've had all different types of views on here, and one of them was like a pro metabolic view. I don't know if you're familiar with, like, I've had like Jay Feldman on recently, Mike Fave hasn't come out yet, but Dr. Ray Peat was one that sort of influenced them. And you talk about like rice, like the rice diet was popularized by, I don't know if you know, Dr. Walter Kempner did a help people with diabetes with eating simply pretty much white rice and fruit and things like that. So maybe why don't we get into some of the benefits of consuming carbohydrates and how that can be a pro metabolic way of doing things.
Yeah, I mean, from a statistical perspective, before we even dive into the biology of it all, if you take a look at since the United States has cut back our carbohydrate intake, and we've cut it back significantly since about 1999, 1998. Since that time, obesity has skyrocketed. We're eating less carbs than ever, and we're more obese than we ever have been, and more unhealthy than we've ever been. So, going low carb has not helped us. Um, I think going low carb is not great from a gut health perspective. The quality of calories that you consume on a low carbohydrate diet tend to be a little bit worse, depending on who you listen to. Cutting out carbs also means cutting out carrots and tomatoes and a lot of fruits, whole grains, all of these things that have a plethora of research showing the health benefits of them. So going low carb has not worked for us, is not working for us. Um, and the introduction of carbohydrates is important for so many reasons. Number one is all of the ingredients that we know definitively are very healthy for us, like whole grains and fruits and vegetables, tubers, legumes. These are all things that are part of the healthiest diets in the world, like the Mediterranean diet or the Scandinavian diet or the China study or the Japanese diet, the Okinawan diet. Any of the places around the world that really are thriving and living the longest are having significant amounts of these healthy carbohydrates in their diets. And so the issue for us is not about cutting out carbs. The issue for us is having quality carbs, whole carbs. And quite often when we think we are eating a carb that is unhealthy for us, so like I cut out donuts and French fries and I lost weight. Well, donuts and French fries are actually fats. They
Right.
receive the majority of their calories from fat, not from carbs. Brian, there was a really interesting stat I read between 1974 and 2024, 50 years. The average American consumes 700 calories more per day. That's a lot. So we are eating more, right? And everyone thinks that our problem is overconsumption of sugar. Of those 700 additional calories that the average American is consuming a day, how many calories do you think are coming from extra sugar?
Probably minimal. Mostly from fat.
40.
Yeah. 40
Exactly. Yeah,
calories.
40.
Yeah.
So it's the added fats that are the problem. And I'm not to curse all fats. Some fats are really great and healthy for us, and we need fat in our diet. But we've gone so far the other way with hyper processed foods that are using fat for shelf stability and for mouthfeel, and it's most fats are pretty cheap. The additional fats are the problem. And
Mm.
and yeah, sure, too much sugar is not good, but not enough carbohydrates is also not good.
Well, I don't know if you like noticed there's been a bit of a shift lately with I don't know if you've seen like the sugar diet, people going sort of have you seen this or no? Maybe it's not a
No, no.
okay. So like it's been growing a bit, at least like I don't know if you know Mark Bell. Um he was a low carb guy for a while, keto guy, pretty well known in that space, and start hooked up with this guy Cole Robinson, who's probably tried everything, and like just
Mark
started
Bell, the weightlifter, Mark
yeah,
Bell.
yeah, yeah, and he started
Okay.
getting into the sugar diet, where you're pretty much, and there's also been like I know there's so many different diets out there and stuff comes and goes, and when I heard about this, I'm like, well, this sounds a bit crazy, but yeah, I talked about it with Mike Favel a bit, and there's pros and cons to it. I think, sugar on its own, it could be metabolically good if it's as long as it's not overconsumed. Because I think people are so, like you said, people are just scared of it. Um, and so,
Well,
anyways,
people are scared of carbohydrates, of which
right.
sugar is a carbohydrate.
Correct. Yeah. And anyways, I think he sort of slowed his pace a little bit, but it did get him to realize that, carbohydrates, which essentially or sugar, like there can be a lot of benefits for. And I actually just did a short video on how, even with like thyroid function, and I mean, I talked about like even brain power and cognition can help with things like that, and even athletics performance. There could be benefits around carbohydrates. I mean, there's a lot. I think what happened was we went into this like ancestral viewpoint where we thought that, well, if our ancestors didn't eat it, it's not good for us. But just because our ancestors did something doesn't necessarily mean that it was great, like optimally for our health now, in the present day. Um, but anyways,
Yeah,
it
I agree with you. I hate that. I hate that reasoning for justifying something that we should do it because someone did this thousands of years ago, hundreds of thousands of years ago, tens of thousands of years ago.
right.
People did a lot of stuff thousands of years ago. People did a lot of stuff 100 years ago that we would never do today. So, I was on someone's podcast yesterday, and he was talking about he's a big fan of the guy who created the Paleo Diet, and I called. Am I able to swear?
Sure.
I called bullshit um, because I've actually taken the time to read a lot about Paleolithic man and the diets and um, the nutritional habits back then, and there was no paleo diet. There was no such thing. First of all, different parts of the world where there was Paleolithic man, the diet was different. And most of what we consume were bugs and insects and berries and beehives and things that were really easy and convenient for us. And so the idea that you can buy primal ketchup and primal salad dressing today, that has nothing to do with or paleo crackers and paleo cookies. That's just a justification to create a business. And so I'm
Right.
with you. I don't like when people justify things by saying we used to do it thousands of years ago. We should still do it.
Yeah, and the body's so smart and can adapt to almost any diet. It's really amazing, and I know there's the crave of like this craze of the carnivore diet, and I think there's definitely a lot of pros to it in the sense that if it takes someone off like the standard American diet, then it can be very beneficial, and you're gonna see weight loss. You're probably gonna get more energy, especially if you're coming from eating a lot of processed foods. So I feel like it depends on where you're coming from, because you could come from a lot of junk and then change to, some type of ancestral diet, let's just say, like just eating meat. But I think like long term, like how sustainable is that? And that's like sort of when this sugar diet came, like, well, there might be some pros to this, especially from people that are sort of scared of that lens of like eating. But long term, like you really getting nutrients. You're definitely probably lacking protein. um,
I mean, with all due respect to Mark, I'm sure he's a great guy. I've actually spoken to him before. I like him. He's come up with these great bands and straps to help you
yeah,
do bench press and squat and things that are so effective. But I think that's a little bit of a cry for attention when you come out with something that's a superlative and an extreme, maybe to prove a point, and maybe that's what he's doing. But
right.
there's the Twinkie diet. Mark Howard came out with the Twinkie diet, where he had only Twinkies for 10 weeks and he lost 27 pounds. Or there was the McDonald's diet. John Cessna did the McDonald's diet and he lost 40 pounds. Only McDonald's. There's a potato diet. There's the rice diet. There's all these examples and case studies of academics over the years just trying to prove the point that it's about the law of thermodynamics, right? So if you want to lose weight, you need a calorie deficit, eat less, burn more. And if you want to gain weight, vice versa. And so whether it be sugar with Mark, if that's what he's doing, potatoes, Twinkies, McDonald's, all of these hyperboles of eating styles are just to prove a point that it's calories in versus calories out, whatever those calories are. Now, as you mentioned, the quality of those calories are compromised when you start doing something like having a sugar diet or a potato diet or a Twinkie diet. And you will have health detriments, as a result. But as far as pure weight loss and weight gain, it's calories in versus calories out.
Yeah. Uh, I've always been gone back and forth. I do agree. I mean, I think calories and calories, obviously it plays a role, but also too, like it's important to understand like what those calories are and how they're sort of affecting your
Exactly.
body. I mean, so I think it's yes, I do agree calories and calories play a role, but sometimes people look at it at such a simplistic lens that like I think there's more nuance a little
Yeah,
bit than that. Um,
without a doubt.
and so maybe give some highlights of the book and like what was
Yeah.
your the main message that you tried to send to people regarding it.
I start off by talking about my childhood in the 1980s. I remember that fat was bad, carbs were good, and so much so that we started a whole new industry of hyper processed foods, specifically the Nabisco Snackwell cookies,
Yeah, I remember
and they were
those.
these
Yeah.
fat-free cookies, right? And
They,
so if they're fat-free,
couldn't stand the way they tasted, but that's some people loved them, but yeah,
I think I tricked myself into thinking they're the most delicious thing in the world because they were fat free. And so,
right.
wow, it's a cookie and it's fat free. And so, growing up on this low fat, high carb philosophy, which is what we were bombarded with, where it was about calories in versus calories out, and um, and it made sense to me. And fat is almost 2.5 times the caloric density of protein and of carbohydrates. And I was a bodybuilder in my late teens and early 20s, and we would manage our caloric intake throughout our bodybuilding preparation schedule. And I can't think of a more lean, low-fat version of a physique than a competitive bodybuilder. We step on stage, you see veins and striations in all of us. And that's eating carbohydrates right up to the moment we walk on stage. That's eating sweet potatoes and rice and rice cake. And we never turned away from carbohydrates. And so as the low carb diet came back in popularity, it was always very confusing to me. It was confusing to me from a body composition perspective. It was confusing to me from a health perspective. And so, as I mentioned, you have people having bacon double cheeseburgers that don't have the tomato and don't have the bun, and as a result, you'll be better for it. I think that really confused me, and so I wanted to really understand, why do we have the low carb diet? Who's it for? And it does help some people, and there's people who um, have epilepsy, often do better on a very low carbohydrate diet. There's people who overconsume hyper processed foods that are mainly carbohydrates. And so if you're someone who eats way too much bread, and if you're someone who eats drinks way too much fruit juice, and that's your issue, and rather than just swapping those out for their natural forms of them, cutting down carbs is a way for you to control your calories, and that works for you, then that's totally fine. And we know that before Banting and Best found insulin in Toronto, at the University of Toronto, diabetics basically had to have zero carb diets in order to exist. And I understand that. Here we are in 2025. I don't understand why someone would want to have, rendered bacon with clotted cream, and stay away from a lot of vegetables, stay away from most fruits, stay away from whole grains, stay away from legumes. It doesn't make sense from a scientific perspective. It doesn't make sense from an applied perspective. So welcome to 2025. Welcome to the Carb Reset. We're going to use carbohydrates to take weight off and keep weight off and stay healthy and enjoy life in the process.
Yeah, and I'm sure when you were working with, I don't know if you still work with the celebs now, but when you were working with them, probably I'm assuming a lot of them probably thought along that same mindset of like low carb. Was this something you ran into a lot with them? Or
I think some of them certainly came into our work together with that mindset that, oh, I'm getting ready for this movie. Now I got to cut my carbs, at which point I would say, okay, I'll tell you what, let's make a deal. Let's do it my way. And if it doesn't work, then we'll do it your way. And I've had a lot of luck, um, that my clients have been successful in transforming their physiques. One of my books in particular, The Body Reset Diet, I think is the top, or one of the top selling smoothie books, in American history. It's not such a big claim. Not a lot of people write smoothie books, but obviously in smoothies you have carbohydrates, and you have fruits and bananas, and people were losing weight and feeling great because we were able to control their caloric intake in the process. We were able to get all their important nutrients and ingredients in the process by putting proteins in there and healthy fats in there, and fiber in there. And so when you don't have enough carbohydrates, you tend to be deficient in a lot of micronutrients. If you're not eating fruits and vegetables, you're going to miss a lot of vitamins and a lot of minerals. You're going to miss a lot of fiber, both water soluble and insoluble. And so fiber is really important for controlling your appetite. And so I think the introduction or reintroduction of carbohydrates as a significant part of your diet in their whole form. So I want you to have rice, not rice flour. I want you to have fruits, not fruit juice or dried fruits. And so returning to good carbohydrates, whole carbohydrates, less processed carbohydrates will help you lose weight, keep it off, and enjoy life in the process.
and for someone that's been low carb for a while, do you feel like there should be some type of transition with implementing carbohydrates instead of, I think sometimes people maybe haven't, they haven't been able to oxidize carbohydrates for a long time, and they've been just like a fat oxidizer. So like to make that transition, do you take a sort of a step-by-step approach to that, or how does that look?
There are extreme cases of people who have, we call it the metabolic syndrome, and have uh, insulin sensitivity issues from being very obese for long periods of time, or from having under muscle. So obviously, you're at risk for type 2 diabetes when you're obese. You're also at risk for type 2 diabetes when you're too skinny and you don't have a lot of lean muscle tissue. So I would say preparing yourself to have a healthy diet starts with physical activity, and specifically strength training and putting on lean muscle tissue has this insulin-like effect on our bloodstream. It can usher sugar out of our bloodstream into our muscles so we get to use them. But as far as preparing yourself to introduce carbohydrates, I don't think so. It's not a negative feedback loop. It's not like when you don't have dairy for a long time, your body stops making lactase and you can't break down lactose and you have to slowly reintroduce it. If you've been on low carb for a long time, have a potato, see how that feels. Probably pretty darn good. And I'm talking about baked potatoes, only 100 calories,
Right.
and it's full of nutrients and fiber and potassium, and so I don't think you need to prepare yourself to introduce carbohydrates.
Okay. Yeah. I would agree. I would say that maybe the leafy greens, perhaps for some people might, especially if they're not used to digesting them, they might be a gut irritant maybe initially if they're not haven't had them in a while.
Uh, I think everyone is different. I have trouble with leafy greens.
Okay.
I always have. And so there's certain vegetables that I find the preparation technique is key to A, being able to digest it, and B, being able to extract the nutrients from it, which is why I've been such a big fan of blending for so many years. A, if you don't know how to cook and you don't have time, how much, what's simpler than blending? But there's a research out there showing the bioavailability of the nutrients for the ingredients that you put in a blender. It's like baby food. It pre-digesting it for you. And so,
Right.
eating raw spinach for me, I can't do it. But sautéed spinach with a little lemon juice, I got it.
Hmm.
Broccoli for me in the raw form, it's just not happening. But steamed broccoli, and then steamed broccoli, I throw in the blender to make a broccoli soup, no problem. So preparation is important for certain high fiber, especially insoluble fiber ingredients. Preparation helps a lot of people digest them.
Yeah. Yeah, I've been implementing actually a decent amount of white rice. I like it. I think it's fairly easy to digest, and it goes with like everything. You can sort of do with it what you want. And like you said, like visiting countries like I think did you say Japan and how it's such a big part of their culture and they have such a low obesity rate there. I mean that alone. Have you heard of that Walter Kempner diet, the rice diet that he did for people with diabetes? Have you heard of that?
No, but I
Oh,
want to make a note of it. Hold on. So it's what's his name?
yeah, Dr. Walter Kempner in the mid like 20th century. He like literally helped people manage and reverse diabetes. It was a pretty big, I think he worked with quite a lot of people, but it was written upon and a lot of people in sort of the, let's just say the higher carb space, just talk about it because of how effective it was.
I appreciate that. Yeah, the rice
Yeah.
diet. I'm going to take a look. A treatment for malignant hypertension before the advent of drugs. It actually worked very well.
Hmm.
Thank you. You've given me some ammunition. I appreciate that.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I've had debates on the podcast with carnivores and pro metabolic individuals and
Now,
so yeah.
out of curiosity, when you hear, and this is sort of really symptomatic of the state that health is in today, it's become so politicized.
Yeah.
If I tell people, drink pasteurized milk because the chance of you or your children getting a foodborne illness is exponentially lower, you have people politically who get really upset. They're like, no, have raw milk and go to the farm and suck it out of the teats yourself. And so, with that being said, of the people that are standing on a podium yelling the carnivore diet, which I think is of all the fad diets I've seen in 34 years of practice, perhaps the stupidest. At least it's up there. Do they have a university degree in nutrition? How many of these people actually have a degree? They're trained in the
Mhm.
field of nutrition.
Hey everyone, quick interruption here. If you are looking to gain energy, lose inches around your waist, and build strength, well, look no further than my book, The Step Ladder System: 6 Steps to Lifelong Health and Vitality. What you get with the book is my full step by step plan and blueprint that I've worked with all my clients with, packed into one book. With part one, you're going to lay the foundation, tackle any common challenges that might come in your way. Part two is my 6 pillar blueprint: how to set yourself up with a solid plan and know exactly what to do when life throws any curveballs. And lastly, step three are learning to implementation, a plan for getting results over the next weeks and beyond. So there you have it. I'll leave a link in the show notes for my Stepladder System book. Now back to the podcast. Yeah, I mean the biggest pusher of the carnivore diet for a long time, and now he's backed off it quite a bit, was Dr. Paul Saladino, who was a, I want to say,
Psychiatrist,
what's that?
psychiatrist.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, he's also the guy that used to be vegan.
right, right,
He's had five different things where he's,
right,
and
and
so
that, yeah,
he has no nutrition training. He surfed the web and taught himself. And so psychiatrists do not have nutrition training. In med school. You get, I think it's 90-minute lecture in first year med school. I know because I give it at a med school. So it comes back full circle. People that tend to be promoting extremes are looking for clickbait. They're looking for attention, and they tend to not really have sound fundamentals of truly understanding nutrition and the human body.
yeah, and to his, let's just say, defense, he has backed off, and I think he tried it initially. He might have been having some skin issues and eczema and things like this, and maybe was having some reactions. And I think like went full bore into the carnivore, but now is implementing plenty of carbohydrates. With
But don't you think there's a fiduciary duty if you claim to be a physician
right,
and to do no harm, that maybe you shouldn't be using your platform to promote extreme diets if you keep flip-flopping between those diets? I think leave it to the professionals who are trained, just as though I'm not a psychiatrist and I'd never pretend to be one because that's not my training.
right. No, I do agree with you. I think nowadays, just with the way social media is and the platforms that people can put themselves on and build a following, they can sort of say what works for, well, they could say what they want pretty much. But I think it all comes down to, I always tell people, like, self-experiment on yourself. I think that's the best way of learning what works for you.
I mean, to some extent, sure.
Yeah.
But as somebody who's in practice, again, Paul Saladino, he's not in practice. He's not seeing patients all day, every day for nutrition. I have done this for probably since he was a teenager.
Right.
Um, and I can tell you that a self-experimentation on some level is okay for some people, but a lot of people have body dysmorphia and um, are already very confused. And I think giving them extreme radical diets to experiment on themselves, I think is not necessarily a good thing. I have kids. I wouldn't say, try some radical thing, kids, and do some crazy radical diet to see how it works on you. I don't think that's a good idea, especially when it's not founded in proper science. I think uh,
Yeah.
it's too complicated for most people. We have a really obese country, so I think giving people extreme radical messaging to try on their bodies perhaps is not the best way to go.
Yeah. No, I would agree. I would agree. Um, what about what about fats? I know, we've talked a lot about carbs. Fats, from the most part, from what I use with some of my clients, like 20 to 30% of the diet. Is this something that you talk about in your book a little bit? Is how people should implement their fats?
Yeah, I think fats are important. When you have a tree and you want the tree to thrive, you need air and you need sunlight and you need water. And for us to thrive, we need carbohydrates and proteins and fats. We just are eating way too much fat. And I think there are different kinds of fat, and certain fats have more health benefits than other fats, which is not to say there's no such thing as a forbidden ingredient. Anything you want, you should have within reason and balance. And so I use this hand gesture called PATH. So P-A-T-H.
Yeah.
So it's a palm full of carbohydrates, the amount that can fit in your palm. So legumes, whole grains, fruits that fit in your palm. A for all the vegetables that you want. There's no minimum, but there's also no maximum. T in PATH is for the mass of your thumb of healthy fat. So from the base to the tip, this much avocados, nuts, seeds, olives. Um, and H for the mass, at least the mass of your hand of protein. So I really simplify it for people because if I give them a percentage, have this percentage of your diet from this and this percentage from that means they have to calculate how many calories they're consuming every single meal and every single day, which some people are okay to do, but that often becomes pathological at a certain point. It's not a sustainable way to live. It's somewhat antisocial, weighing your food and measuring it and counting your calories. And so it's okay for some people, but I think the big picture of the hand gestures are pretty helpful.
Hmm.
If you are to look at a macronutrient breakdown, I tell people 50 to 60% of your diet should be carbohydrate, and about 30% from protein and about 20% from fat.
Yeah. That's yeah. I think like just being in this space for so long, like and seeing extremes on both ends, it's like uh it all comes back to the balanced approach. Right?
Exactly. By the way, I
Yeah.
wanted to show you something. I'm having a banana.
Oh my
Do
God.
you understand how many Americans think that having a banana is bad if you're trying to be lean? And this having a bite of a banana will put people over the edge. Yet they're okay having coconut fat
Yeah.
spread on it's really crazy. So cheers to the carbs.
Oh yeah, I mean I've been implementing quite a bit of fruit in my diet. And I would say, and I know you said even fruit. I mean, I think even dried fruit there can be a place for it. I think maybe you. I know you said maybe not, but is it because there could be an overconsumption of that? And then you mentioned fruit juice. There's actually quite a bit. I think there's quite a bit of studies showing that fruit juice, there's some benefits there as well. But are you worried about fruit juice when it comes to just over consuming?
I think when we talk about obesity and when we talk about health, we also talk about processing foods and processing ingredients. And I think the closer you can get to eating a food in its natural state, the healthier that ingredient is for you. And it tends to have a lower caloric density. If you take a look at dried fruits, calorie wise, they're anywhere from 2 to 6 times more calorically dense per gram than the fruit in its natural state. And yeah, there is the potential of eating a massive amount of calories if you're not paying attention. And so, someone eating dried mangoes, you want to talk about a calorically dense food. Look at a bag of dried mangoes. I mean, thousands of calories of just sugar. And so that's one thing. I think having a high water fruit or high water vegetable is a huge part of satiety. And when it comes to juicing, well, first on dry fruits, there's also a lot of added sugars and oils to certain dried fruits as well. So if you look at dried cranberries and dried mangoes,
Yeah,
look
right.
at the ingredients, you'll see oils and sugars in there as well. Um, so calorically dense from a calorie density perspective and over consuming them, I like to stay away from dried fruits unless it's to season something and you're just using a little bit of it. Freeze dried fruits are a little bit different. But for the most part, dried fruits I try and stay away from unless it's a dessert. Juicing, I do not like. Juicing is a dessert. I love it as a dessert. On a Sunday brunch, I love nothing better than a really good orange juice. I love a good juice, but it's a treat, and you need to view it that way. And so, if I have a glass about this big and I want to make apple juice, how many apples do you think it would take to make this much apple juice? Maybe 5 apples. So let's say an apple has 85 calories. So you're now consuming 425 calories of sugar, zero fiber, zero fiber. Whereas, and you're not full after. Whereas if I was to eat an apple, right, it would take me a bit to eat. There's some time there. There's a lot of research showing that how long a food takes to eat is also tied very much into your caloric intake over the course of a meal in a day. And it's the food's in its natural state, and everything works well together, and the skin and the meat and all those things are the way that they're supposed to have been designed. And I'm consuming 85 calories instead of 425, and I'm getting 3 grams of fiber instead of 0 grams of fiber. So juice is very easy to overconsume. There's no satiety components in juice. The oxidation of the nutrients in juice happens the second you juice them. So though you'll see on a bottle that having this much orange juice has this much vitamin C, those calculations are based on the ingredients used to make the juice, not the juice in its final stage. So if you were to put that juice in a bomb calorimeter, it would probably have a different nutrient profile than the ingredients used to make that juice.
Do you look at juicing and smoothies differently? 'Cause I know you came out with a
Completely
smoothie.
differently.
Okay, because you
Yeah,
have a
I'm a
smoothie book.
huge fan
Yeah.
of smoothies because nothing's taken away. When I core an apple, but I leave the skin on when I put it in to make my apple pie smoothie. You drop berries in their entire state. fruits and vegetables. And I always give this analogy to people. Like, imagine holding a piece of raw salmon in your hand. Okay, give it a little pulse, give it a little squeeze for a second. Pink droplets of liquid will fall on the floor from that raw salmon in your hand. Is that salmon juice or is that salmon water? So, is there any of the protein in the salmon in that liquid? No. Any of the healthy fats in that salmon in that liquid? No. That is just the water that is, part of that protein with some of the natural dyes of that salmon that are in that water. There's no nutrient value of that. And so when you take a beautiful vegetable that's been cared for and planted and harvested, and you take a spinach and you squeeze that spinach and you end up with green water, you're not getting a lot of the benefits of eating spinach. You're not getting most of the benefits. You're not getting any of the fiber and a lot of the iron. And so I think there's this confusion that if you see something a certain color, then it must have nutrients representative of that color. But when you blend it, there's nothing being taken away. Everything that was in that food is still in that food. So that's why I'm a big fan of blending and smoothies as opposed to juicing.
Yeah. Okay. That makes sense. And what would you say? I like to ask this question, and you've already answered it a little bit, I think. But like, what's one thing you've changed your mind on in the past 20 years?
Oh, that's a good question. I think I've changed my mind on a bunch of stuff. Um, there were certain ingredients I would really try and stay away from. Like, I'll never have that. I'll never have this. I love nothing better than an incredible French butter. I mean, really, it's really how much do I have of it, and what else have I eaten that meal in that day? And I really changed my thinking. Like, there is no bad food. There's no bad ingredient. There's a bad diet. That's it. And the other thing I've really changed my mind on is, as a bodybuilder many years ago, we kind of came up with the concept of a cheat day, where you would eat well all week and you pick one day and you just go ham on that day, and you go, you just decadence and sloth and gluttony. And so much so that I remember working on a film with a client in the mid 90s, guys, in the mid 90s. And the client, we were getting ready, he had to look like he was in prison, and he had to look like he'd been working out to get revenge and to come out and kill Sharon Stone and Dennis Quaid. And he ate so lean, and we had him doing all the right things, and he looked fantastic. And we would have a cheat day on the weekends, and we would pick a different city, and we would buy tickets to that city and fly there and just eat our way through that city and then come back to film for the beginning of the week. And what I found was, we'd start our day with an incredible brunch, waffles and pancakes and all these great things. And then we'd planned, we'd go to this famous deli for lunch, and then we'd go to this pizza place in the afternoon. By the way, after brunch, I was full. The rest of the day, I was forcing myself to eat these decadent things because it's cheat day. This is when you got to do it.
Right.
And also, this word cheat has negative connotations. It has to do with feeling ashamed of what you're doing. It's bad. You're cheating.
Right.
So I completely changed things around. So instead of a cheat day, I have 2 free meals a week. FREE, free. Don't use the word cheat. I use the word free. And free to do what you want. Maybe you don't want to eat heavy. Maybe you still want to eat clean. That's totally up to you. They're free meals. You do whatever you want. And they're 2 meals and not a day. And so a day has 3 meals for the most part, and sometimes more. And whereas 2 meals throughout the week, you can put wherever you want. You got a wedding party to go to on a Saturday, great, there's your meal. And then the following Wednesday, you have a birthday party, there's another one. So you can split them up. They're free. There's no structure to them. And we've removed any guilt or negativity associated with them. I've changed that for sure.
Yeah. I like that. 2 free meals a week. There's your one right there. No, that's a clean one. The banana, if you're watching or not watching. It's very interesting. What is your routine like? We talk a lot about routines. I'm a big routine guy.
Sure.
Yeah. What's like your typical morning or evening routine, just to get you ready for the day, or to sort of let you get you ready for sleep?
Well, I mean, today's a great example. So I wake up. I have 3 little kids. I tend to wake up before them in the mornings. I'm a huge coffee fanatic. Actually, my job in the military was, I was a caffeine scientist for 3 years.
Oh,
So a big fan of caffeine in moderation and used properly. Big fan of coffee specifically. So I have my coffee routine in the morning where I make myself a cortado or macchiato. and I make myself a breakfast. Breakfast is probably my most robust meal of the day.
Mm.
And so whether it be sweet or savory, this morning I had egg white French toast where I use a high fiber bread, soak it in egg whites and cinnamon, and put some mashed berries on top. Yesterday I had a smoothie. Day before I had an omelet. So for me, breakfast is huge. I don't think I've ever left my house in the morning without breakfast. Anyone who uses the excuse of I didn't have time, I never understood not having time for breakfast,
Mm.
because it's not as though you had anything beforehand that you were running late for. You decide when you start your day. I
Right.
get not having time for lunch. You're in the middle. I get it. I don't like it, but I understand that. I never understood not having time for breakfast or dinner, because your day doesn't start until you have breakfast, and
Right.
dinner's after your day is done.
Well, I
So
think it's the people that get up late and then they have to go to work and
you
probably
slept in.
right.
Don't tell me you didn't have time for breakfast. You
Yeah,
slept. And
no.
even then,
Right.
today we have so many of these great ready to drinks.
Sure.
Grab a core power, grab a slate milk, grab something, grab a fruit, grab a yogurt. So there really is no excuse to not have some kind of nutrients in the morning. So I'll do that. I'll have my breakfast. I'll have my coffee. I'll go to the office. I'm at the office most of the day when I'm not traveling, and I'll have lunch. And for lunch lately, I've been doing a shirashi don. For those of you who don't know a lot about Japanese food, it's the easiest thing ever. It sounds more exotic than it is. It's just a bowl of steamed rice with
Mm.
a bunch of salmon sashimi, and I have some cucumber slices on top,
Mm.
and it's so delicious and so filling. And it's right in that with that PATH acronym. And then I'll have probably a ready to drink at some point in the day, little protein drink that's pre-made, whether it be slate milk or core power or something like that, and some berries. I love berries. And then dinner is always different, but I love fish, and I'll have some kind of fish generally with some kind of whole grain or carbohydrate, and then some kind of vegetable. And then for dinner for me, or bedtime for me, is a very, very big one. So I go to bed very early. I try to go to bed early. I watch some brainless show with my wife in bed, like Love Island or something like that. And I try not to watch right up to bedtime. What I
Right.
like to do is I like to put on music on my phone with a timer. I put an eye mask on, and I close my eyes in a room that's about 69 degrees, 68 degrees. And next thing you know, it's tomorrow.
In your workout routine, was it a power lifter or you were
Bodybuilder, yeah.
bodybuilder? Yeah.
Workout routine. I strength train. I just actually changed it up. 3 times a week for about 45 minutes.
Hmm.
I split my body parts up into 3 days. At this point, I'm 5'11", 220. I don't want to put on more muscle mass. I just want to maintain what I have throughout life, and be pain free. Um, my training partner travels for most of the summer. And so I train myself. And when I do now, I change my workouts. So instead of 3 days a week for 45 minutes, I do 6 days a week for about 20 minutes.
Mm.
And a little less volume, two body parts, two exercises a day. I go back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, and I'm done.
Mm.
So I'm really enjoying this really short,
Mm.
focused, more often workouts.
Yeah, I've talked about it before on the podcast. These micro workouts, I think they're great. Like 20 minutes done. Just takes the excuses out.
And by the way, you take someone who's super fit and you have them join me for these 20, 25 minute workouts, it will kick their ass.
Right.
There's a former Mr. Olympia who's a good friend of mine, and he's such a great guy. It's funny, growing up, I had a poster of him. He doesn't know this. I had a poster of him in my locker of like a body that I wanted to have. And he's just turning 60. And we spoke a few months ago, and he's like, dude, I'm just getting back into the gym again, and I can't do what I used to do back in the days. And, you know, I need to
Yeah.
change my workouts around. And so I was like, all right, let's ditch the 90-minute workouts. Let's try these 30-minute workouts. And so he's just posted the other day on social media the picture of, you've never seen a 60-year-old look like this. And he's like,
Mm.
Harley, shorter workouts are everything, man. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. You definitely got to make changes as you get like the 40 plus, I'd say.
I think so. And I think,
Yeah.
quite often our approach to working out is based on what people before us did to work out, not necessarily science.
Mm.
And we do as much as we can do. We try and maximize workouts as opposed to what's the least we need to do to get the most. And if you look back at Arthur Jones, who created Nautilus, and really was one of the modern day founding fathers of applied exercise science. And he worked with Mike Menser, who was, I think, runner up to Arnold Schwarzenegger in 8 or 9 years in a row with, I think, the only perfect score ever in the Mr. Olympia from a physique perspective. And he was all about short workouts. In
Mm.
fact, the Nautilus strength training equipment that you see back in the day, it came with it a program where you do one set per body part per day.
Oh yeah,
You're done.
sure. Yeah.
And with Mike Menser, the workouts were very, very short. And with Dorian Yates, one of the other most prolific Mr. Olympians, the workouts were very, very short. And my training has always been very, very short. My first book I wrote was called Five Factor Fitness, and it was how I got Halle Berry ready for Catwoman. And we worked out 5 days a week because we shot on set 5 days a week, and we had 30-minute lunch breaks, and so we'd have to work out in that. And she'd come in, we'd do a 5-minute cardio warm up, and then we would do a circuit of upper body, lower body, and core, 5 minutes each, 15 minutes, and then a 5-minute cardio cool down at the end, 25 minutes, 5 days a week. And she looked phenomenal. And
Mm.
so, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's a whole like, I don't know, like following of the one set to failure sort of ideology, I guess, or way of working out. And some people really they love it. And I think something like that, especially as you get older, easier on the joints. Just a focused. As long as you come in focused, and you have to have this like mindset going in, one set to failure and done. I think it could be pretty effective.
Yeah, someone gave me a great analogy yesterday of they're really into detailing their car, and they have these vintage cars.
Hmm.
And there's certain cleansers they use that, man, they work so well, but sometimes a little too well, and they take off more than you need.
Mm.
And what they're learning over time of really owning these cars is you want to use a less intense cleaning technique, cleansers that are less powerful, and maybe just take the surface off. Because if you go too hard, too deep for too long, you're going to take off the base paint of the car. And I think the
Mm.
same we can talk about our body. Is you go too deep, too hard, too aggressive, not only do you train the muscle you want to train, but you tend to really stress and tax your joints and connective tissue and ligaments in a way that is detrimental over long term.
Yeah, no, that's a great analogy, and I also too just avoiding injury. Uh,
Yeah.
Less chance of being injured if you're doing one set versus three or four. Especially if you've been lifting for 30, 40 years, like you said, like the car analogy. Um, I like to also sort of finish up with this question. What's one tip you'd give someone if they were, maybe looking to get their body back to what it once was 10, 15 years ago, and they're sort of let things slide a bit, and now they're trying to get back into it?
I would say, stop staring at that picture of you from 20 years ago. That's not you anymore. That was the 20-year younger you. Yeah, I've got pictures in my office of me as a bodybuilder on magazine covers, and I look at those and I'm like, that's pretty cool that I did that then. Today I'm a guy in his 50s, with a lifetime of battle bruises from different injuries and hockey, and I don't want to compare myself today to that person. Then I want to say, all right, the Harley of today, how do I make me look the best I can look, and not using it from old pictures, but
Mhm.
rather focus on the process. So I judge myself by what I do and not by how I used to look, or not even, how I look today. Because if I focus on the things I have control over, which is what I'm doing, what I'm eating, how many steps I take each day, how often I strength train, that's all I can control. Focus on the things that you directly can control, your actions, and judge yourself on the actions, not on an old picture of you and not a number on a scale.
Yeah. No, I love that. Because yeah, we're all different, right? 20 years ago, we could do things that we couldn't do now. So it's like, uh, yeah, just take with what you have now and work with it. And I think a lot of things is just taking that first step too, right? Like
Yep.
I always talk to people about like walking, like a simple task, right? That you can do it. It's easy to do, but it's easy not to do. So it's just
Right.
about like there's a great book called The Slight Edge. And the author's escaping, but he talks a lot about that sort of compounding effect. And anyway, so yeah, Great analogy though.
Yeah,
But
I love that you gave me the Walter Kemper thing. I'm going to read up on that, and the Mark Bell thing. I didn't know that about Mark, and so
oh,
you've given me some gems that I appreciate.
oh yeah. I mean, yeah, well, you type in sugar diet, you'll find plenty of stuff, and Mark will probably be at the top of it. But he's actually backed off a little bit from it. Initially, I think he was like all hard, like this was like the end all. Yeah.
But that's a great example. I mean, you talked about Paul Saldino, talking about whatever extreme diet he's promoting at the time, and then he's like, "Oh, I was completely wrong. Let me go to the next one. I was going to the next one." At a certain point, when do you stop listening to someone who's promoting an extreme diet and then even says, "Oh, I was wrong. Let me do a different thing now." And so, bless Mark, and he's a lovely guy. I've spoken to him, and I think he's only good intentions.
Right.
But if you have a platform, I think perfect your messaging. And if you want to experiment on an N of one, and you're the one, that doesn't necessarily mean it's going to work for anybody else ever again. It could, maybe for some people, but that's when it comes back to evidence-based knowledge. And when I'm speaking to you, I'm not speaking to you about the carb reset because it worked for me, and not only because it worked for the 1,500 clients I've worked with, but because this is all based in a plethora of evidence-based, published, peer-reviewed knowledge that we have. And I'm not going to flip flop a month from now and say, remember I said you could have sweet potatoes? I was wrong. Don't do it. So I think in a clickbait era that we're in,
Right.
I think listen to people that have the experience with seeing patients on a day-to-day basis, clients on a day-to-day basis for many, many years, have wisdom of that, but also have the evidence-based knowledge of having studied the craft or the field that they're teaching you about.
Yeah. No, it's a perfect point. I totally agree. And I think in general, just with everything going on in the world, like there's a lot of people who use their platform and say things that they probably shouldn't be saying and in areas that they don't know anything about. But that's, anyways, I'm not going to go down. But that could be nutrition and non-nutrition things in general. But well, Harley, this was great. Where's the best place for people to find you?
My website is harleypasternak.com, or they can go on Instagram. I'm pretty active on Instagram, which is just Harley Pasternak, HarleyPasternak. The book, The Carb Reset, is available for pre-sale right now. I'm really, really proud of this. I'm excited about this book. I think if you're someone who wants to lose weight, but really lose weight in an enjoyable, sustainable way and keep it off. If you're someone who wants to be healthy, if you're someone who wants to know more about nutrition, and if you're someone who wants to feel like the best you and look like the best you, then order a copy today.
Love it. And we'll definitely put links in the show notes. And yeah, I really enjoyed our talk today, Harley. Thanks for coming on.
Likewise. Take care.
Thanks for listening to the show. I know there's thousands of podcasts out there, and you chose to listen to mine. I will put a link in the show notes if you want to connect with my guest. And if you are looking for one-on-one consulting with me, I will put a free 15-minute link so you can set up a call to see if you're fit for my 6-month health breakthrough program. So thanks again. Feel free to rate and subscribe. I would love that to help support the podcast. And till next time, have a great rest of the day, and I will see you on my next podcast. Thanks so much.